Guys, we're not just called to remember, but we also are called to rejoice. In verse 26, it says, whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until He comes. I want you guys to get that. You proclaim, you rejoice, you look forward to the Lord's death until He comes. Guys, we're not just looking back at what God has done for us in the past. We're also looking forward to the future, a celebration of a time where there is no more mourning, where there's no more sickness, where we can be with Christ forever. We also rejoice at what He has done in our lives. Guys, I was once dead in my sin, but I'm now alive in Christ. I remember a young fellow that came through our ministry up in Iowa. Zach Murray was his name. And I remember Zach, I knew of him, but when he came to the youth ministry, there was just some kind of connection between him and me. He came from a very dysfunctional home. His mom was Catholic, and that was not the dysfunctional part. But his dad was very much a man's man. He was a bodybuilder. He was huge. I mean, he was a massive man. And he was a construction worker, but Zeke was more into the arts. And he didn't have the features that his dad had of being just a man's man. And so there was always this odds between Zach and his father. When Zach came in to the ministry, he was just a broken young man. Just a broken young man. And against my better judgment at the time, he was very talented with his saxophone. And so I said, Zach, you want to come play with our worship band? And it was just a wonderful time. But through that, I began to develop a relationship with him. And I began to see the transformation that God had on Zach's life. Had an awesome opportunity to lead him to the Lord. And after we left Moravia and came here, I just heard reports that he kind of went off to the wayside. He didn't connect with the youth pastor very well and began to do his own thing. About a year ago, I get a call from Zach, and he said, "Hey, Pastor Virgil, this is Zach. Do you remember me?" Of course I remember you, man. Just one of my favorite students. He said, "Hey, I'm called into ministry, and I'm taking the classes to be a minister of God. And I want to thank you so much for investing in my life." But guys, as I was watching this young man, I saw a young man that was dead. He was broken. He was hurting. And as God began to transform his life, he became alive in Christ. And now that he is studying to be in the ministry, guys, I look at where he was and where he is today. Guys, let's rejoice this morning of where I was, where you were. Where you were dead to your sin, but also, man, so alive in Christ today. We're called to remember to look back. We're also called to rejoice of what God has called us to and called us through.